Kyle Shanahan said something recently about Brock Purdy that stuck out to me, and I think it's the key dynamic between them, and it explains one of the things, maybe one of the biggest things that Kyle likes about Brock, other than the fact that he's really good. So I'll read it to you, and I want to know what you think. It says, when you have guys who just want to be coached and you don't need to tell them 10 compliments before you tell them a coaching point, then it's a lot more fun, and I think that's how he gets better. He is in Brock.
Read it again, sweetie.
When you have guys who just want to be coached and you don't need to tell them 10 compliments before you tell them a coaching point, then it's a lot more fun, and I think that's how Brock gets better.
Okay. What do you like about that quote?
Well, it lets us know how Kyle Shanahan thinks as a teacher. I would go to your classes, and you used to give a lot of compliments to the writers before you got into coaching points because writers are sensitive, and you have to do that. But I can see Kyle doesn't have patience for that. There's a limited amount of time during the week, and he wants to get right to the mistakes, correct them, and move on. I'm sure Bill was like that as well.
Bill was like that.
Yeah, and he has a quarterback who's right there with him because he wasn't the first-round pick. He has no sense of entitlement. It's not his job. He has to continue to prove himself freaking daily, and maybe it's his temperament. So I don't know if it's a jab at any other quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, anyone else. It just seems like this is the kind of non-ego grinder that Kyle wants to coach. I don't think he would want to coach someone like Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Kyler Murray where pretty much whatever they say goes, and they run the organization.
Okay, but it's clear that Brock Purdy doesn't need psychological hand-holding.
That's a good
and
phrase.
he can just say to him, look, we accomplished that. Let's move on to this.
Yes.
I want to look at it another way.
Sure.
Because I was a teacher. All the time I was a columnist. I also taught creative writing at University of San Francisco to graduate students, not to undergraduates. I would have a seminar of 8 people. I was, in a sense, their coach. I was in a similar position to Kyle, and these were very gifted writers. Some of them were older than I was. And I found it a pleasure to praise people. You know, what you did in this story over here is really good. I think let's talk about here where it's not quite as good and bring it up to the level of this part that's good. I didn't find it burdensome. It didn't waste time. It didn't take time away from teaching. In fact, when people get praised, they're more open to hear criticism. So what I'm hearing from Kyle is not what he's saying about Brock. I'm hearing what he's saying about himself. Yep. And what he's saying is praise is a waste of time. Mm-hmm. Fuck that.
I agree. Because when he said this, I was thinking, man, I'd need 10 compliments before you would. Like, you know, because I used to send you my articles every time. And it hurts to just have someone go through and say, all right, this. All right, I'm done. It's nice if someone starts to be like, well, first of all, I just want to say I like this and this.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So it doesn't suck. Okay, good. Let's talk about it. So you liked it overall.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Good. Yeah, I mean.
And it doesn't mean that Brock is less of a man if he needs praise. It doesn't mean Jimmy is less of a man if he needs praise. Praise is a good thing. I think coaches should praise. So what it's telling me is 2 things. Kyle Shanahan thinks praise is a waste of time. I humbly disagree.
Yeah.
And it tells me that Mike Shanahan did not praise him.
That's so true. That's so true.
Iggy, he learned not to praise.
Yep, because his dad probably didn't.
Yeah.
I would guess.
So am I supposed to think that's good?
No.
Am I supposed to admire that?
No. Because people may not realize it, but my dad and I have a very close relationship, and he praises me and has my whole life, all the time.
But I've criticized you.
True.
But you can listen.
True.
You don't say screw you because you know I have your best interests at heart.
That's true.
I can tell you, and I've said it before, Steve Young told me Bill Walsh never praised him. Now, he didn't say, great, Bill never praised me. He was astonished. He said, we would finish a drill. I would do really well, Lowell. And he'd say, let's move on to the next thing. And implied was, where's the attaboy? Yeah. Now, Steve was able to still be great, but he kind of would have liked it. I don't know how Joe was. I always like to get praised. I knew Bill for 30 years. He never once praised me, ever. But Bill wanted to be praised.
Right. Kyle wants to be praised. Oh my
Yeah.
God, Kyle wants to be praised. Yes.
Yeah, Kyle wants to be praised. Bill wants to be praised. So why do you withhold?
And I think what we're learning is this is why Kyle's had such a tough time building relationship with quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks want to be praised. Quarterbacks have the biggest ego on the team, and Kyle likes a guy with no ego. Where do you find that guy? Oh, okay, Mr. Irrelevant. Okay, so you got him. But and so good for Kyle that he freaking found the right guy year 6, because it's not easy to find a quarterback this good, this humble, whatever. This
Yeah, I mean, if
open
he
to
had
Kyle's style.
Aaron Rodgers as a young man, if he had Aaron as a young man, and he needed praise from Kyle, so what's wrong with that? Yeah. You got one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Massage his ego. Tell him you're great. So what I hear from that quote, I don't hear anything about Brock Purdy. It's really the first insight I've ever had into Kyle Shanahan's psychology, and I could say it's 100% different from me as a teacher, because we're both teachers, and it's not something I admire. I.e., praise is a waste of time.
Right.
Give me a break.
And we don't know that necessarily that's how Brock is. Brock is doing what he has to do to survive as the starter. So if that's how Kyle wants to coach, then he's going to say, great, I love that style of coaching. But,
Yeah.
you know, if he becomes a starter and eventually he's getting $50 million a year, he might say, hey, Kyle, could you come to my office for a second? Could we talk? Don't ever fucking talk to me like that again. You know what I mean? Like, the dynamics could change. And from what I understand, like, there are teams right now that are completely run by their quarterbacks. When you start giving quarterbacks $500,000 with 85% of it guaranteed.
Brady. I'm sure he
Kyler.
runs that team.
Kyler, who hasn't, Kyler, it's one thing for Brady, who's 45 with his 1 million championships to run a team, fine.
Yeah.
Kyler, what have you accomplished, Kyler? But you gave him that contract, you picked him number 1. I mean, the tail is wagging the dog, and always will in Arizona.
Yeah.
Not happening on the Niners. Anyway, but I like how you spun it.
What? I think Harbaugh praised players.
Oh, absolutely. He wanted his players to have huge egos. One of the things he did for Alex Smith and Colin Kaepernick was praise them. Because Alex Smith had been beaten down for years by his coaches and the fan base. You're not that good. Harbaugh came in. I think he's good. I think Alex is really good. And then when Kaepernick came in, I think this is the best quarterback in the league. That's the best athlete in the league, the best quarterback in the league. He would speak it into existence. And if it's like, man, if Jim Harbaugh feels that way, I think he's right. Forget what the fans and the analysts think. Harbaugh's right. I mean, it goes a long way. And he's the guy who comes out after Brock's best game last week, 3 touchdowns, and he's like, yeah, he had some good, some bad.
And he won't praise Ayuk either.
No. So strange.
Won't praise Ayuk either. And I'm seeing this. I'm thinking his dad didn't praise him. I mean, I could be wrong, but it's looking to me like his dad didn't praise him. And he thinks that's how you teach. And I want to emphasize, if you like praise and like to get it, it doesn't make you less of a man or immature or a weakling. It's nice to get praise.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's nothing wrong with it.
No. Kyle.
It creates a good atmosphere.
And what's funny to me is, so McDaniel went to Miami, and he's lost a bunch of games recently because his quarterbacks got hurt. But he had quite a successful start to the season when his quarterback was healthy. And what McDaniel did was basically watch Kyle for 20 years, take all of his football principles, take it to Miami, and just implement them in a more positive way. That's all he did. So you can see his perspective was, I like what Kyle's doing, but I would just be a lot nicer about it. Basically, that's his perspective. I'll just be a whole lot nicer about it. I mean, I think that's Robert Saleh, too. Robert Saleh is not that way. DeMeco Ryans is not that way.
And Robert Saleh is a man's man.
Yes. Robert Saleh used the word, yes, and DeMeco too. DeMeco used the word energy vultures, which means you can't have someone who sucks the energy out of the room. Well, Kyle sometimes can do that with his negativity.
I know when I was a writer, and if somebody read something that was in process and said, this sucks, I would lose heart. But if someone said, I think this can be a really good piece, but I'm having trouble with this, I would be open-minded. I wouldn't get defensive, and I would work at it. But if you said you sucks, you feel, what's the point? So I'm not saying that Kyle says it sucks, but he advertised himself as a man who feels praise is a waste of time. I want to tell him, Kyle, you're wrong.
But
You're
what's
dead
ironic
wrong.
he craves praise, and he hates criticism. So what he likes about Purdy is that Purdy can take criticism. Kyle can take no criticism. He doesn't even like being questioned by people like me and Prescott. Hey, why'd you run the quarterback between the tackles? You know what I'm saying? You can't question him. You can't criticize him, but he criticizes, and he needs praise. He should have a little more self-awareness. Good coach, though.
Also, self-awareness, and I also think, Kyle, I don't know you, and you may be a very nice man. I think it's a little small-minded.
Yeah.
That approach is a little small-minded. I think as I've gotten older, I've learned generosity goes a long way, and it would take 2 seconds. Hey, nice job. Let's move on. What did you lose by saying that? What did you lose?
Yeah, and Kyle Shanahan, your opinion carries so much weight.
Right.
Don't you think you could get more out of praising a player than criticizing him? Hey, I like this about you. I actually think you're better than you think you are, as opposed to you're not as good as you think you are. Oh, you thought you had a good game? Let's talk about the 4 plays you fucked up. No. Wouldn't it be more powerful to be like, I'm Kyle Shanahan, and I think you have something special if you do X, Y, Z? Isn't that more a powerful?
Yeah.
That's how you manifest things. I don't know.
So what we actually studied in the last 10 minutes is, obviously, I've spent a lot of my time reading fiction. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of great novels that are a first-person narration. I tell the story. Huck Finn tells this story. It's not a third person. It's Huck telling it. What you always learn is what they seem to be talking about, whatever the subject is secondary to what it reveals about the speaker. And what I got from the Brock Purdy quote from Kyle was not anything about Brock Purdy. Kyle revealed himself as someone who thinks praise is a waste of time. And that, to me, is a knock in the head. My head.
Yeah.
Okay.
That being said, he needs to praise, but I understand him liking a quarterback who's not entitled and who
agree.
I get that. And to me, it's so hard in today's NFL because the quarterback you sign in free agency is getting $25 million a year. How do you coach him? You know, he's got the quarterback you take in the first round. He knows he's going to be your starting quarterback because you don't take a quarterback in the first round to sit him. So how do you coach him? It must be harder and harder. And I don't know if you want to talk about that, but I feel like at a certain point it becomes harder and harder to coach certain pupils. And it's when you find one who actually wants to be taught, it's really nice. It's really nice.
Yes. I would say one other thing. What you're talking about, harder to coach people, I think the NBA is rife with that problem.
How can you starting to happen in the NFL?
Yeah. How could you coach LeBron James? He wants to coach to coach.
No, he'll get you fired.
He'll get you fired. So I've really lost interest in the NBA, and that's part of it. It's upside down, and it's beginning to happen in the NFL.
But it's definitely beginning to happen in the NFL. I mean, Kyler essentially just got Cliff Kingsbury fired. I mean, Russell Wilson, they can't move on from him, so Nathaniel Hackett gets fired. I mean, if Aaron Rodgers wanted to, he could snap his fingers and get Matt LaFleur fired. I mean, that's the way Tom Brady did essentially. It seemed like he got Bruce Arians fired last year. Like, quarterbacks are very powerful right now, and the Niners happen to have an old school guy who's has no power at all. He's
not a threat to the head coach.
Not a threat to the head coach. No, right. Sir, yes, sir guy for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I can see why that would appeal to any coach, right? I don't know.
Yep.
It's a dream.